Okay, so today we're working on a 2014 Hyundai Elantra. And what we're experiencing is this vehicle has a lot of noise going over bumps. So every time it hits a bump, it sounds like a rattle coming from the front end. And the reason that is because the struts are getting weak and they're going out. And what inside of a strut, you have bushings that tend to go out, and strut mounts, which acts as a cushion, also tends to go out. So what we're going to do today, I have a complete strut assembly that we're going to install once we remove the old one. Let me show you guys that real quick. And that's what we'll be switching out there. And the rattle tends to normally come about from here. That's a bearing inside there, and that's the strut bushing, the strut mount. So that's normally where our rattle comes from once it gets old or deteriorates or wears. So we're going to replace that today. These three bolts right here come up from the underside. Right here, there's one, two, and then there'll be a third one there. So to get to that, I'm gonna have to remove this cowl where the wiper blades are to get that out of the way so we can get that trim out of the way. Looks like there's a push clip here that I'm gonna remove on both sides, and I'll have to remove the wiper arms. Take that, it had a cover on there. I'm gonna take that bolt out, or that nut, and on both sides, and wiggle those loose. And I think there might be a couple of clips here and there. There's one there, one there. So there's gonna be a few scattered throughout the cowl. We'll remove that out of the way, and I'll be able to access those three bolts. The other thing is, the rest of the work is gonna be done from the underside. So we'll lift it up and I'll show you that when I get there. So right now I'm gonna remove the cowl and get it started, and I'll come back and show you that, and then we'll lift it up and look at the underside. Okay, so I removed the cowl. There it is on the ground there. And now I can see my three bolts that I wanted to get to, or three nuts actually is what they are. So I'm gonna loosen those, and I'm gonna start working on the bottom side. Just so you know, if you're curious, that's the wiper motor. If you need to ever access that, that's how you're gonna get to that as well. All right, so like I said, I'm gonna remove these three bolts and start loosening from the bottom side, and hopefully I'll be removing it downwards while it's up in air. All right, so I've removed my three bolts from the top side. Let me see if I can glance on that. And as you can see that the strut has went down as I released those bolts. And here it is from the bottom side. And you can see me moving it around. So now all I need to do is I'm gonna remove these two bolts here from actually the bolts from this side, and then holding onto those nuts with a wrench using an impact on the other side. And this is a sway bar end link. Let's see if I can show you a little better. This bar right here, that's a sway bar end link. These tend to make noises too. A little bit of a knocking noise you'll hear going over bumps. So sometimes that could be the culprit of your noise also. So I'm gonna remove those two and remove that, this top one to the sway bar end link, and push that back out of the way. I'm gonna unbolt my sensor wire. That's gonna stay behind. And also I'm gonna unbolt this bracket here that holds the brake line. And as you can see, the sensor is also tied into it too. So both of those will stay behind. I'll unbolt those, move them out of the way. And hopefully after that's said and done, I'll be able to remove my strut assembly. And I'll do this for both sides, all right? Okay, so I got one of the struts removed, and I wanted to compare the two and just kind of show you. Something you always want to do is compare your two parts to each other, because you want to make sure everything's going to line up correctly. So I'm looking at the alignments of the tabs, these two, these also, and looking at the placement of the springs. And I can see, this being the original one, that mount looks like it could be a little deteriorated compared to this one. So there might be my rattle problem. I'm hoping that is the case. So we got one strut removed, and I'll show you with it gone. That's what we're looking at. So now you got a nice empty view. You can see everything. And with the strut missing now, you're seeing the whole assembly minus the strut. So everything's out and open now. There's my sensors that I told you I was gonna leave behind. So I'm simply just gonna slip that new strut in and start tightening up those bolts. So I'm gonna do that, and here's your sway bar end link laying to the side. So I'm gonna put that back in, tighten it up, and we'll see how that goes. Okay, so I'm gonna show you guys a little trick that I like to use when doing struts. Unfortunately, the whole control arm falls downwards and makes it really hard to line up these bolts for the strut. And I'll show you on the other side just so you get a better idea. So this one's hanging down right now still, and the strut is in its upright position. But for me to line this up, for one, it's very heavy, but there you go. Look at the distance and the gap. I need that top hole there at the top hole up there. And it's pretty hard to do, especially by yourself. But there's two ways of doing this. Either one is, if you're doing this on the floor, you can get a floor jack and lift up the control arm about right there. And if you're in the air like I am, you can use one of these pole jacks, and this would allow you to push up that whole assembly, and then you're able to slide those two bolts in as I did there. So something to watch and keep an eye on, so you guys can have some tips and help when you're doing this. Another thing too, this sway bar end link, it did come with one. I didn't realize it. So I will be installing that sway bar end link also too right now. So I'm going to go ahead and assemble this side. I'll show you a fully assembled side, and then we'll go to the other side. Okay, so we got everything reassembled. I'll show you where I tightened the two bolts that came out and held the strut together, and the brackets, the two 12 millimeters that were there, tightened those also. And we installed the new sway bar end link, which is secure. This one is actually a lot better than the factory one, for the simple fact that it has grease certs. So we can go and grease these and hopefully prolong them from going bad and lasting us a little longer. So everything from the bottom side is put together. All I have left is I'm going to install the wheel. Sorry guys, trying to do this one-handed. So we're going to install the wheel, and we're going to lower it back down and tighten up the three bolts from the top side. Because those are currently, they're just held on by nuts, but they're not tightened down yet. So I'll get this on the ground, put the pressure of the weight of the vehicle on the struts as I'm tightening them, and that'll allow me to get that pretty snug. So I'll lower this down and show you guys the view from the top side. So here's the view from the top side, and you can see there's my three studs that came up from the strut assembly and the three nuts that torque it down. They do have a torque setting, and you know, every manufacturer is different, so check your torque setting on that. But that is the struts mounted. So really, frankly, what all that's left is we have to finish, of course, the reassembly, which we're going to install the cowl, and I'm going to try to show you guys how easy that is. Simply just, it's going to slide in there like so. Same thing on the other side. Just like that. This one had a washer hose for the washer fluid. I'm gonna have to reconnect that, which they just slide together. Put my push pins back in and reinstall my wiper blades, and this service will be done. The only thing that would be left, and that's going to be for a later video, it needs an alignment. Anytime you replace struts, you want to do an alignment, because it does change the aspect of where the wheels are positioned. So you have to switch that out, and once you switch those out, you have to readjust it, because it could throw off your camber and also your toe and caster. So we'll see what kind of adjustments it has, but as I said, that'll be for a later video, and we'll get into alignments on that one. But as far as this goes, all that's left, I'm going to reinstall that, and I'll be right back. So here's the finished product. I did complete putting the cowl back on. Unfortunately, some of my clips that held on were pretty brittle, and they fell apart. So I'm going to have to order some new ones for that. But the cowl's back on, wheels are back on, struts assembled. As you see, no longer can you see the strut bolts. And we're all ready to go. So all put back together, and now that's one more repair down. And until we get the alignment done, we'll call it officially complete. So there you go. That's a strut installment. Now I do want to iterate that on this strut installment, these were struts that were already completely assembled. Sometimes you have to use a strut machine and use the spring and swap it over. Didn't have to do that on this one. So keep that in mind. And I did want to point out the two struts that I pulled out. Now I was talking about a noise, which we were talking about these strut mounts possibly being the problem. But if you can look at the two and just compare, one of them, this one over here, looks very greasy. So it was leaking. So that could possibly be our problem too as well. So it had a leak going on. So now that that's switched out, we got two new struts on there. I'm hoping that our noise will go away from here. So until next time.